For decades, Apple's remarkable success was built on a powerful combination: American innovation and design, paired with the manufacturing might of Asia. Nowhere was this more evident than in China, where Apple's devices were assembled at an unprecedented scale, a partnership that fueled the global tech supply chain and helped Apple become a household name. But as tensions between the US and China escalated, the system that once seemed unbreakable began to show cracks. The US imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, exposing Apple's vulnerability to shifting geopolitics and the risks of relying on a single country. Apple realized that concentrating so much production in China was no longer sustainable. The company began searching for alternatives, looking to Southeast Asia for new opportunities and greater resilience. Vietnam quickly emerged as the top contender. With a young, skilled workforce, a government eager to attract foreign investment and close proximity to existing suppliers, Vietnam offered a compelling mix of advantages. Apple started by moving production of AirPods, testing the waters with simpler products. Encouraged by success, the company soon expanded to more complex devices, building new supply chains from the ground up. By 2025, this shift had become a full-scale pivot. Apple announced that for the US market, all major products except the iPhone would now be assembled in Vietnam. A bold move that sent shockwaves through the industry. This marked a historic turning point. Apple was no longer just diversifying, it was building a parallel supply chain, creating a safety net against future trade wars and global disruptions. The move was designed to create long-term stability, protect Apple from unpredictable shocks, and ensure the company could keep delivering products to customers worldwide. But just as Apple settled into its new strategy, a fresh challenge emerged, not from Beijing, but from Washington, D.C. The company's efforts to diversify would soon be put to the test by a dramatic and unexpected change in U.S. trade policy, threatening to upend Apple's carefully laid plans. Apple's gamble on Vietnam was about to face its toughest trial yet, as the company braced for a new wave of uncertainty. The global tech landscape was shifting faster than ever, and Apple found itself right at the center of this transformation. Would this bold new strategy pay off, or would it backfire and threaten Apple's dominance? The answer would come sooner than anyone expected as the world watched Apple navigate its most critical crossroads yet. Just as Apple thought it had sidestepped the US-China trade war, shifting much of its manufacturing to Vietnam in hopes of escaping costly tariffs and supply chain disruptions, a new challenge emerged on the horizon. President Trump's administration announced sweeping new tariffs, this time targeting Vietnam, a country that had quickly become a vital hub for global electronics manufacturing. A proposed 46% tariff on Vietnamese goods sent shockwaves through the tech industry, threatening to upend carefully laid plans and investments by companies like Apple, Samsung, and countless others. After tense, high-stakes negotiations between US and Vietnamese officials, a deal was struck. The blanket tariff was replaced with a targeted 20% tariff on electronics, specifically the kind of products Apple now made in Vietnam, such as iPhones, iPads, and MacBooks. This was still a huge jump from the previous rates, which were under 4% or even 0% for many electronics. For companies operating on razor-thin margins, this change was seismic. The White House framed the deal as a win for American interests. Vietnam would drop tariffs on US goods in exchange, opening new opportunities for American exporters and manufacturers. But for Apple, it was a costly setback. Billions spent moving production now faced a five-fold increase in import costs, threatening to erase the savings and flexibility gained by leaving China. The deal also included a steep 40% penalty for transshipping, routing Chinese goods through Vietnam to dodge tariffs. This was a clear warning to companies considering creative workarounds. Apple's complex assembly in Vietnam likely avoids this, since most components are sourced globally and assembled locally, but the message was clear: no loopholes would be tolerated. The administration was determined to enforce its America First agenda, no matter where Apple built its products or how global the supply chain became. Apple's carefully laid plans had run straight into a new trade war, forcing the company to rethink its global strategy yet again. The company now faced a dilemma: absorb the cost and risk shrinking profits, or pass it on to consumers in the form of higher prices for iPhones and other devices. The stakes for Apple and its customers had never been higher. Investors watched nervously and consumers braced for price hikes. The next move would shape not just Apple's future but the future of tech manufacturing worldwide, as companies everywhere watched to see how the world's most valuable brand would respond. The 20% tariff now hits a wide range of Apple products assembled in Vietnam for the US market. AirPods and Apple Watch were the first to shift, proving Vietnam's manufacturing capabilities. Now iPads and Mac computers, including the Mac Mini and MacBook Pro, are also made there. Nearly every Apple device except the iPhone is affected. For millions of Americans, the hardware they rely on daily is now subject to higher import costs. The tariff isn't just policy, it's a direct hit to the devices in classrooms, offices, and homes across the country. A 20% tariff is a massive blow to Apple's bottom line. For a company importing billions in hardware, this means hundreds of millions in new costs, money that comes straight off profits. Apple spent years and billions shifting to Vietnam, only to see its investment penalized. The company's stock dropped 16% after the tariff announcement, reflecting investor anxiety. With the US market making up 40% of Apple's revenue, the stakes are enormous. Apple faces a tough choice: absorb the cost and shrink margins, or raise prices for consumers. Absorbing the cost isn't sustainable long-term. Passing it on risks damaging Apple's brand and market share. Either way, the tariff forces Apple to rethink its global strategy again. The financial impact is immediate, but the long-term consequences could be even greater. Tariffs rarely stay hidden in corporate ledgers. They almost always reach the consumer. For Apple, a 20% tariff on a $1,500 MacBook Pro adds $300 to the cost. It's unlikely Apple will absorb this across its entire product line. Expect higher prices at the Apple Store and online. US consumers who once enjoyed some of the lowest Apple prices globally may now pay more than buyers in Europe or Asia. This could frustrate loyal customers and change buying habits. Apple products are essential tools for work, school, and life, not just luxury items. The tariff's burden will fall on families, students, and businesses. The era of stable, predictable Apple pricing in the US may be over. For many, the cost of staying connected just got higher. President Trump's tariffs are part of his America First strategy, aimed at rebalancing trade and bringing manufacturing jobs back to the US. The administration argues that decades of unfair trade deals have hurt American workers. Tariffs are meant to make overseas production less attractive, pushing companies like Apple to build at home. The goal: new factories, more jobs, and less reliance on foreign supply chains. The White House says short-term pain, like higher prices, is worth the long-term gain of a revitalized manufacturing sector. Trump's message: if you want to sell in America, make it in America. The policy is controversial, but its intent is clear: reshape the global economy in America's favor. The divide between Apple and the White House is stark, highlighting a fundamental disagreement over the future of American industry and global trade. President Trump calls the Vietnam deal a win for American workers and fair trade, emphasizing his administration's commitment to putting America first. We're making trade reciprocal. Other countries will pay to sell here, and we'll sell our products there tariff-free. This is about leveling the playing field for American businesses. It's about bringing jobs back, revitalizing American manufacturing, and ensuring that the benefits of trade flow directly to US workers. The administration's message is clear: build in America, avoid the tariff, and support domestic industry at every turn. Apple, meanwhile, warns that tariffs are essentially a tax on US consumers, leading to higher prices on popular products and harming the company's global competitiveness. We're deeply concerned by these tariffs, a spokesperson says, pointing out that the costs will ultimately be passed on to American families and businesses. They penalize efficient supply chains and risk hurting American consumers, making everyday technology less affordable and accessible. Apple highlights its significant contributions to the US economy: taxes paid, jobs supported, and innovation driven. Arguing that its impact extends far beyond just product sales, the company argues that moving all manufacturing to the US isn't feasible, given the complexity of global supply chains and the need for specialized skills and resources found worldwide. Apple's view is that global integration drives innovation and prosperity, not protectionism, and that collaboration across borders is essential for technological progress. The clash is about more than tariffs. It's about two competing visions for America's economic future, one focused on self-reliance, the other on global cooperation. The debate is far from over, with both sides presenting compelling arguments and refusing to back down. Both sides are digging in, and the outcome will shape not only the tech industry, but also the broader American economy for years to come. The world is watching to see who blinks first, as the stakes for innovation, jobs, and global leadership have never been higher. The tariffs' impact ripples far beyond Apple. Other tech giants, Google, Microsoft, Meta, also shifted production to Vietnam and now face the same tariffs. Higher hardware costs could slow U.S. progress in critical areas like AI, as data centers and chips become more expensive. The uncertainty makes long-term planning nearly impossible for global companies. Retaliation from other countries could spark a cycle of escalating trade wars, hurting American exporters in every sector. The tariff on an iPad in Vietnam could ultimately affect a farmer in Iowa or a factory worker in Michigan. The global economy is more connected and fragile than ever. Apple now faces tough choices: absorb costs, raise prices, or shift production again. Some costs may be absorbed short-term, but higher prices for U.S. shoppers are likely. Rebuilding a U.S. electronics supply chain would take years and billions, raising device prices even more. The administration hopes tariffs will bring jobs home, but the reality is complex and costly. Consumers may hold on to devices longer or seek cheaper alternatives. The future of affordable, premium Apple tech in the U.S. is uncertain. Trade negotiations, political shifts, and global retaliation could all change the landscape. Apple will keep lobbying against tariffs while preparing for a world where they're permanent. The coming months will reveal whether tariffs bring jobs back, or just make tech more expensive for everyone. The story isn't over, and its ending will shape the future for Apple, its workers, and millions of customers.